So apparently, some House of the Dragon viewers were upset about the graphic nature of last week's episode, even suggesting that the episode should have had some kind of trigger warning for those who watch this show with a fragile mental state. For one, that's why we have TV ratings before the episode starts, and two, if you need a trigger warning before a Game of Thrones episode, then you might be watching the wrong show. Or maybe you're just not a Game of Thrones fan to begin with. Just saying.
S-O-F capital T. Soft. Huh?
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Do or do not. There is no try.
So House of the Dragon Episode 2, more importantly than anything else, begins with opening credits and that iconic Game of Thrones theme song.
I like it a lot.
And I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't think that was a brilliant creative choice. HBO and WB reportedly have desires to build the Game of Thrones franchise, and I happen to think that using a recognizable theme song is a great start in doing that. As for the episode itself, we find Rhaenyra Targaryen becoming increasingly frustrated with her position in the family. It's not enough for her to be named heir to her father's throne, especially when it was done basically to spite her uncle.
Fuck me, right?
She clearly wants to be taken seriously as a viable future leader. Unfortunately for her, she makes some questionable decisions in this episode that kind of doesn't really support her case. She tries her hand first at interjecting in a council meeting. The meeting is about pirates disrupting King's Landing shipping lanes. She offers a solution and they all balk at her for obvious reasons, because she's pretty much just talking in a place where she's not welcome.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
I am interested to find out why King Viserys is so reluctant to use the dragons that are at his disposal, like his daughter is suggesting. He seems like he just wants to keep the peace and he's more of a laid-back ruler. But all through this episode, you get a sense that he is increasingly naive and very easily manipulated. He also seems to have a conscience, which a lot of people in Game of Thrones do not.
I don't give a fuck.
Because he clearly feels guilt about what happened with his wife, and he should. He shows a lot of hesitation when Lord Careless offers his 12-year-old daughter to him as a future wife, which honestly made me look at Lord Careless a lot differently, to say the least. And even when the king ultimately makes a decision about who his new wife will be, it's clearly playing into the plans of that person's father, Otto, the Hand of the King. I just get strong Ned Stark vibes from Viserys. He doesn't really seem equipped to handle the politics and backstabbing that typically goes on in King's Landing.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
So Lord Careless is desperate to go to war with this crab feeder, who is the man responsible for all of the disruption in the shipping lanes. We don't get to see much of the crab feeder, but what we do see of him, I think his design is pretty cool. And his practices of feeding live people to crabs does make him an intriguing threat moving forward. Lord Careless doesn't get the action against this threat that he wishes to. And we see him on more than one occasion in this episode kind of talk back to the king.
I'm gonna go pick a fight.
Now as a viewer, I'm sitting there and thinking to myself, at what point do we just nip this in the bud and get rid of this guy? Because clearly he's going to be an issue for you moving forward. But like I said, the king is pretty naive, and I think he feels at ease because ultimately Careless is married to his cousin. But based on his cousin's bitterness about not being named queen, I'd say his faith in her is a bit misplaced as well. So that again plays into his naive nature.
But you one crazy ass bitch!
The other shadow looming over the king's reign is his brother Daemon, who has apparently taken control of Dragonstone without his consent, and he's even stolen a dragon egg, which impulsive people tend to do. Hand of the King Otto confronts Daemon in Dragonstone, and the disgruntled Targaryen does not back down to the king's demands. He even threatens them with a dragon, of course. But then Rhaenyra shows up with a dragon of her own, and basically she talks her uncle down and even convinces him to give back the dragon egg. Why? And this was probably the only part of this episode that I really had some issues with. If for no other reason, it's just that Daemon seemed to give up way too easily. And I'm also not entirely sure that I'm ready to take Rhaenyra seriously as this master negotiator or a great leader. I mean, at this point I'm thinking to myself, if she can't follow simple orders and do what's best for her father's reign, then how exactly is anyone going to take her seriously as a future leader? She's kind of doing things to ruin her own reputation. Yes, Queen! But in her mind, she's building her reputation because she solved a problem. And I guess the fact that she has a relationship with Daemon helped her in this confrontation. I don't know, the scene just came off as a bit weird to me, and it didn't really jive for me 100% based on what we know about Daemon. The episode concludes with Lord Careless trying to form a secret alliance with Daemon.
A what?
Due to his frustration with the king's lack of action against the crab feeder. So the backstabbing in Game of Thrones is in full effect, as you can see. Someone mentioned in my comment section last week that this power struggle within one family is kind of boring to them, and I will admit that things are slightly less complicated narratively in House of the Dragon compared to what we got in the original Game of Thrones, but I think it still works, and I think it was a great way to reintroduce this world to people, and by them keeping things a little bit more straightforward initially, I think it just makes it a bit more digestible for maybe some new fans who might be coming in.
That makes sense.
One thing I do have to mention, and it's something that I kind of miss about Game of Thrones, is all of the in-between traveling between locations. Remember when Ned Stark was on the King's Road for like an entire season? I get that we're going to lose that a little bit when we have dragons in the picture and we can get from one place to another pretty quickly, but I always felt like this was the kind of stuff that made the world feel that much more bigger. It doesn't really have the same effect when in one scene a character is in King's Landing and then in the very next scene they're automatically in Dragonstone. And I don't need a whole season of traveling, obviously, but one transition shot or two could go a long way into rebuilding this world. It's a minor nitpick, but it's something that I noticed in House of the Dragon, and it's something that was also going on in the later seasons of Game of Thrones. And it is something that I'd like them to address at some point.
Put some effort into it!
Overall, I'm still enjoying House of the Dragon a lot more than I thought I would. And I'm really interested to see if they can keep this same energy through the entire season. I hope for their sake that they can, because I don't think the Game of Thrones franchise can handle any more disappointment after a promising start.
Y'all be cool. Right on.